I'm not going to paint slowly today. I'm going to paint at my normal pace. And because quite frankly, I think the results are better when I don't try to go too slowly. I'll probably just use two brushes. They are this size, they're both the same size, 5 centimeters. And I know that some people really like to know the size. It's about 2 inches wide. First thing to do is get it in your head how easy it is. So I'm mixing phthalo blue. Bear in mind, this is also going to be a very dark picture. It's going to be, well, mysterious, not dark. There's a difference. And it's one of those where the horizon and the sky will meet, and you may not see the dividing line. The other thing to remember when you're painting is, right, I'll show you what not to do. I always like doing this. I'll show you what not to do. This is how you don't apply the blue sky to the picture. You don't do that. Okay, there's a few seconds of what not to do. What you want to do is this. And trust me. Oh, and the other thing is when you buy one of these easels, just for entertainment, you may experience what I experience every time I buy a new easel, and that is I don't want to get paint on the easel. That's okay for the first 2 or 3 paintings, and then as you can see by the top and the bottom to some extent here, you can see exactly where that ends up because the paint just goes everywhere. It doesn't matter. It's just a thing to hold the painting. And years from now, when this is in a gallery somewhere, the easel won't be there, just the painting. So don't worry about the easel. It's just a tool for holding your painting. And it may sound minor, but once you get that in your head, the concentration needs to go to the painting and just the painting. And the paint application it needs to be lively. Paint becomes much more interesting when you apply it in a lively manner. And I'm just going to get some lively white here. Some artists, when they squeeze the paint out, will, and I've seen them doing it. Get that, take that top off, squirt the stuff, and they throw it on a table with all the other tubes, with all their tops off, so that they can just paint quickly and just get into it. I'm not quite that far gone yet, but I know that some people do it. Clouds. This is going to be the cliff bit. This is going to be the cloud bit. That's going to be the sea bit. So, but at the moment, don't think of them as clouds. Don't think of it as cliffs. Don't think of it as sea. All it is the application of paint at the moment and the fastest clouds that you can ever paint. All kinds of interesting things happen by the horizon, particularly by the sea. And the bit that always gets me is where you can't tell where the sea ends and the sky begins. Always fascinated me. I might actually use 3 brushes, but we'll see in a minute. So this has got the same color on it, which is phthalo blue and Payne's grey. But I know up there it's going to be darker, so I'll just sort of apply a bit more paint there. But I don't want flat color. You don't want that anywhere in your paintings. Once you have flat color, it becomes boring. Get a few tonal variations in it. And because I've done this and that, doesn't mean to say that this will just be the cliff. At the moment, it's at the stage where anything can happen. But the main thing, excuse me, is to be as free as possible with your brush mark. got the beginning of a nice looking horizon there. And for the people who've never seen me do this before, if you're going to paint a horizontal line, the worst thing you can do is to put your arm over there and pull it towards you, or put it here and move it away. The thing to do is to put it on the board and move your entire body, and you'll get a much more horizontal line, because you're not using all the wrist, elbow, and shoulder joint. Okay, so it's move, just transfer the weight from one leg to the other, and you'll have a decent horizon. Now the sea, from my experience, well, most of my life spent in England, the sea is basically a sort of grey, dull, greeny, slaty sort of colour. But I have lived in places where they do actually have blue sea. So I'm going to sort of just let the colours dance around a bit. Now, I don't know whether you can see that. I'm going to hit the focus button again just to see whether it improves. I don't know whether that actually got better. Let's have a quick look. Well, it seems slightly better. It's not that bad. I could write to Zoom, but I think it'd be a waste of time. I don't think they would actually reply to me. But yeah, it's probably as good as it gets. Right, so the right, we've got our horizon. We've got some grey in here, a few lumps of grey. It all looks the same at the moment. It looks like blue, but trust me. Okay. So the sea, everyone has trouble with the sea. Everyone has trouble with clouds. And clouds, I find clouds easy. The sea, it doesn't come as naturally to me as it could, but I sort of get by. Don't start off trying to paint breakers, all this crashing on beaches. Don't do that. Play with paintings of the sea before you get into that. I'll do a few a bit later, but at the moment, all I'm doing is getting some tones in there. So I want to give the illusion of the sea. I'm not trying to paint the sea, trying to paint something that could be mistaken for being the sea. Sounds insane, but amazing what you can just do with a few swirls of paint. Now, what I'm doing here is going to change quite dramatically, because I'm going to take the sea right over here. Maybe there'll be a hint of a beach, but I'm not painting the beach. I'm painting the sea at the moment. So, and they will be combined, because you know that effect when you get shallow seawater or river, you paint what's underneath the surface slightly muted, and that gives the appearance of shallow water as opposed to deeper water. Okay, and the just for a quick effect, here's a palette knife with a bit of white paint on it, just to give you an idea of how you can start to get quite quick effects of waves. So the secret here is relax and don't care if it goes wrong. I'm trying to get movement. I want movement. In fact, I might have a slight raise up here of the water there, like, there's a bit of a wave, maybe, we'll see how it goes. And then subsiding down that way, and then maybe another wave starting to come in about here. But it's movement that you want at the moment, not accuracy. So we'll let that sit for a minute. So the cliff's going to be interesting. I'm going to use a little bit of sap green. Don't have to. You could do it. How could I do it? I could have the top of the cliff with using grey, but I don't think I will. The reason being is that ultimately I'll have some light cloud here, and of course green against a very white cloud up against the sky is going to look dark. It's going to look greyish. So that's what I'll sort of work towards. At the moment, there's brush marks up the top there. Now, the brush marks actually look quite nice. So don't be afraid of brush marks. If you don't want them, you can use a bigger brush to smooth them out, or you can just do this in a circular motion, and that'll give you a sort of flat effect. But at the moment, I'm quite liking my brush marks. And while we're there, again, you know, clouds, get it in your head, clouds are easy. There's a bit of white paint on that. No brush involved. I can sort of add quite an interesting bit of cloud just with a piece of paper. So there's a little highlight on the top of a cloud. That's all temporary at the moment there. Over here, you've got a dark spot and we've got white around it. So I know from experience that I don't need a brush to sort of make up that bit of missing sky, because I can do it with paper. And clean paper, smoothish, don't want the bumpy side, want the smooth side. And just sort of do that with it and see what happens. And you may be surprised at how easy and how quickly you can actually make a sky. But it's got a little bit of reasonable amount of presence to it. Once the paper starts to fall apart, you may be able to see that starts to sort of dissolve and break down there. Just turn it over, so you've got a bit of clean paper. Let's get a bit of something here, I think. Yeah, a line there to start with. And you can probably sense what I'm trying to impart is the feeling of, you know, relax. Doesn't matter if it goes wrong, doesn't matter what you actually do here with, you know, waggling your wrist around like this, you know, it will be a sky. It'll look like a sky, because that's what skies are basically made of, dark bits and light bits. And it's got a definitely sort of a storm coming in feel to it. Should have torn all the bits of paper up before I started. So the cliff top, I'm going to be a bit bold. What I want to do, you see, is avoid sap green and Payne's red ochre. So let's just put a dark top to the cliff. Doesn't matter what it looks like at the moment. I'm not adding any extra oil to this. That's just a dark shape. So we'll have a little bit of cliff there, and it's going to come down across here, and it'll sort of end up way over there in the sea somewhere. And I'm going to take the and still use the same brush. I'm just going to sort of take some of the paint off. Basically just putting it into a bit of paper so that we tone it right down. And then add a bit of oil. And what that will do, it'll give me something interesting here to make into a cliff. Looks like a mess at the moment, but that's to be expected. I'm going to leave some bits white so that when I apply white paint to it, I'm not fighting a solid wall of bluish grey. So some of the white I put on there will maintain its whiteness. And I'll be going over that in a minute with a palette knife too. And I'll do the same thing to the cliff here. Let's have a little bit of a pale channel there. And turn that into something in a minute. And let's have a little one there. So this is sort of underpainting. So where the cliff ends up right out over the sea here, just take away some paint, just so that it's not too much of a battle. Okay, right. And then let's get some white paint on a palette knife. And then see what happens. I sort of know all that because I've done it before, but let's just put some white on there. Oh, and I suppose I should mention, I come from a place where most of the cliffs are chalk. So we're gonna go for chalky. We do have other rocks in England. We have limestone, granite, and all kinds of stuff. But if you want a painting that's effective and reasonably eye-catching, chalk is not a bad thing to paint. And let the board and let the palette knife determine what the texture will be. When you feel that you've actually hit a lucky spot or a lucky texture, then hold off so that you don't overwork it. So here's again palette knife. Let's just have, instead of it this way, let's try one or two that way. Don't mind if it goes into a mist over there, because that's sort of quite effective. Now, when we're in England, south of England, where you have these chalk cliffs, you obviously get lumps of chalk on the beach. We don't do sand very much. We do have some sand, but it's mostly pebbles. Just do a bit of modeling here. Let's just put in a few dark, solid shapes. Right, let's have a few dark marks here because I know I'll need them. Okay. Reasonably eye-catching. There's a shape that's appeared over here. You probably won't see much of that, will you? Yeah, you can. But if I'm really careful at the end, if I keep that, I can add smoke coming off that. So it could be a steamship. So that's the sort of way that you need to think. If it depends what you're painting. If it's going to be a painting of these cliffs in today, you're not going to see that much. But it may just sort of look quite nice. Who knows? So basically, don't be in too much of a hurry to take things off that you think may not be working, because there's always a chance you can make it work. So perspective-wise, it's working quite nicely there. And then let's have another solid mark or two over there. Don't know what they are yet. They're probably shadows on lumps of chalk, sort of stuff. I might do a hint of sand. It may look a bit alien if I don't. Okay. Right, back to a cliff. But anything else, I think a quick flood of water. So down here we got the odd bit of light catching rocks at the bottom of the cliff. Very loosely applied at the moment. It's just things that catch the light at the moment. I'm not, I may look as I'm being careful, but I'm not. I'm just trying not to, I'm not being careful about the type of mark I make. What I'm, in a way, I'm just trying to be very light. Because I want the white to sit on top of the grey and the blue that's already there. Okay, don't know what that is yet, but who knows? Okay, so this stuff here, where we've got the drips, again, I mean, I can either just wipe them off, or I can pick up some white paint and just sort of add it to it. Just push paint and see what happens. I'm going back and forth, I'm checking the painting, and I'm looking at my computer screen, and I'm also looking in the viewfinder of the camera. The viewfinder of the camera gives me a really small image, so I can see the painting from 30 feet away. And the computer screen is just to remind me, really, just to keep out of the way. It's one of those things, though, you know, where the most accurate representation of the painting is the painting or the little tiny picture in the viewfinder. Now, one thing you've got to watch out, I don't want this to be a line. Okay, it tends not to be a line. It's usually a broken line when you get these sort of waves. So I'll just sort of push it about a bit like so. We don't, in England, well, it's changed recently. The type of waves that we get enormous crashing waves now, which was quite rare even just a few years ago. But mostly, you know, big storms in England were quite rare compared to what we have now. So the sea is not going to be like, you know, it's not going to be like, I'm trying to think of somewhere in America where they do lots of surfing. I suppose California, maybe, where all that sea is, you know. Okay, so I want this to be sort of bubbling up on the beach here rather than crashing, that sort of effect. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to use a bit of this new color for me, this Indian yellow, which basically looks like that in the tube, just like yellow ochre. So let's just shove a bit on the beach. I'm not going to need much, it goes a long way. And I don't think I'll even use a brush. Just going to put it on a piece of paper. And it's a very transparent color, so I don't need to add any oil. And it's amazing how it turns into that. Quite incredible. It's a little bit It's a little bit sunny for an English beach, but I'll make it slightly grubby so that it looks more like England, which basically also, one thing that we do get on the chalk, we get a ton of seaweed, which is green, basically. I keep saying basically today, sorry about that. I'll try to stop. There's several words that I'm trying to eliminate from my vocabulary. One of them is basically. The other one is interesting. I noticed in a lot of videos, I kept saying, oh, that'll be interesting. This will be interesting. Well, it may not be interesting, but I kept saying it. So I substituted that for intriguing. And I suppose in a few months, I'll be trying to get rid of intriguing. Come up with something else. Fascinating. Yeah, maybe it's fascinating. We put a little hint of this color over there, not a vast amount. Okay. Right. Let's see what else we can do. Right, so to get the feeling of water coming up on a beach, okay, that's always quite a fascinating effect. And one way to do it is to just grab clean paper, grab a bit of beach, and just pull it over the sandy color. This is what I did in the original painting I showed you. I just sort of messed it up like so. Now, where that turns, it's very important for perspective. That anything that you've got there in that suggest white waves, that turn, because of where we are in the landscape, we're quite, our eye level is just slightly, well, actually, it's about the same as the base of the cliff. So the curve here has to be very sharp. It can't be round. It's got to be like so. If you make it too round, it'll be like you're up in the air looking down on it, and we're not. So that little hint of white water is probably just about right, perspective-wise, I think, what I can see. Now, this shadow in here works quite well, as does this one. I'm looking at this and I'm looking at my screen. Here, not quite right. And the bit that's not right is the bottom bit, because chances are that would probably have a shape like that at the base. It just seems, it's just logical. And this here, there's no paint between this point, and this point. There's no white paint in there. That's all just gesso showing through. So I'm going to put some color on that. Let's pull another one of these flat planes. I think of things as planes, you see, not aircraft, but planes and changes of angle. And as long as it's got plenty of planes, I'm a happy bunny. Going to smudge that a little bit. Right down to that. I added a bit of beach color there, but I'm not too keen on that now. I might just sort of calm that right down. That may be okay. Sort of. Okay, and when you're doing this sort of stuff, with the paper and very little brushwork, don't work these to death. Once it's got a few lumps of paint on it, ditch it, because if you don't, you'll accidentally make a mark that you really don't want. So it's better to sort of keep changing that. Now I can see something that I might be an improvement, and that would be just to add a bit of light there. Just to enhance it a little bit, because there's another plane. You see it's coming along and then it goes away, and then it sort of does whatever it's doing over there. And it actually doesn't look too bad. So I think I might steer away from that. Quite like that. This lump of white that I put in the sea here, it would be better, I think, if I enhance that and bring it along. If you, maybe not now during the lesson, but you could just check out White Cliff UK. You'll see exactly why I'm thinking that. Because it happens, that's the only reason. So I'm just going to sort of steady myself a bit and then just add that along there. That needed it. Okay. This is contaminated, so wipe off the paint, put it underneath this broad bit of white so that I can do this with it. This is actually based on a place near where I went to college called Holywell, just along the coast from Eastbourne. You can actually look at it on the internet if you go and if you put in Eastbourne, that's East Bourne. Holywell, you'll get pictures of the beach and the cliffs just basically peter out like this. And I did a lot of paintings there when I was a lot younger. My goodness. So yeah, I was in my teens. And I used to go and sit there and just sketch this bit of cliff for hours, in fact. I remember the first time I went there, funny enough, this cliff here is quite high, but the bit where I was sitting, it came down low to about 15 feet above the beach. And this is where I saw a shark, which is a very rare thing in England. And it was just a basking shark, totally harmless, apparently. And I was sitting on the top of the cliff, just sort of, glancing down this way, sketching away. And there was a guy in the water swimming here, and the shark came along, got between him and the beach. And I shouted out, "Shark, shark," quite loud. And he sort of gesticulated at me, thinking I was mucking around, until he saw this fin. And then I've never seen anyone move so fast. He was out of the sea, literally ran up the steps. There was a wooden staircase, which I think has probably dissolved now. And he came up and sat next to me. He said, "Thanks for that." Really, he was really very shaken up. So there we are. There's the effect of foliage, not foliage, grass, basically, on the top of a cliff, without using green, in fact. It's just a dark color, because certain colors, when you have light cloud behind it, which is what I'm going to do now, will just look like a dark color. It won't necessarily look like green. And let's start lightening the sky just over there. Okay, so I'm just going to push some paint away. I could have prepared this a bit better up the top here, but it doesn't matter. It just goes to show how flexible it is. So if I just sort of wipe paint away like so, I can put white on there without having to get swamped down in the blue. I have a little slightly different type of cloud going off that way. Don't think of clouds as, how can I put it? Try not to think of clouds as difficult things to paint. Think of them as in their simplest form. And that is something that is usually whitish, floating around on something that is usually bluish. Now, what the type of blue you use is entirely up to you. And that is also down to the sort of mood that you want to put in your painting. So this could be, I don't know, it could be early evening and you've got the last bit of light hitting the cliff. That will explain the dark sky. And, you know, because the sky is blue doesn't mean say it has to be sky blue, pale blue. Like, in other words, it doesn't have to be royal blue straight out of the tube. It can have all kinds of interesting hues. Let's have a bit of a shape there. You see that there's the cloud without painting the cloud. And this is the other effect that I like. So I've got my light area ready to put some clouds on. So same palette knife, not too much paint on it, but I'm just going to sort of have a bit of cloud right up against the cliff. It won't stay like that. This is just me shoveling paint on at the moment. So when you put you're putting a cloud on. So I'm going to put a cloud there behind the cliff. And what shape would it be? So what you've got to do is make it into a shape that catches the eye. Don't just do big bobbly, ridiculous shapes. Clouds don't have edges. They just sort of go off and do their stuff like that. Don't repeat patterns. Don't oversimplify. When I say oversimplify, don't oversimplify the edges. Got a lump of paint there that I don't want. Notice what I'm doing? All I'm doing is that. It's like, you know, we've all, even me, yeah, I've ironed shirts. So think of that as an iron. You're just ironing it. And keep going. It'll start to get more and more interesting as you compress the paint. So we've got a nice bit of bright sky just behind the cliff. And we've got some bits where it's dark against dark. So, I mean, there's not a lot of paint there, but I know that if I get this on there, I can sort of make the edge more interesting. I can sort of build it up a little bit. And again, you'll see it on the photograph, so that there are actually some trees growing on the top of the cliff. And just scumbling the two together a little bit, just to make it interesting. Okay, so what have we got here? Let's see if we can do something with these clouds here. So I've got a lump of paint there. So let's just see what we can do with that. If I just use the tip of the palette knife. sort of interesting. I don't really like, I mean, that's sort of okay, but if it isn't totally okay, then I don't want it. So I'll just sort of break it up a bit. And in a minute, I'll go over this with a big brush just to soften it a touch. I don't want to soften it too much because I think it'll be a bit of a shame to lose the texture. There's something going on here that I'm not overly happy about, and I think the best way to do it is you've probably all seen this where you okay, so I've got a certain amount of rock and stuff here that has fallen off the cliff, and it's sitting down there like so. Okay, so we just sort of give an impression of that. But over here, you know that effect where you've got a dark bit of sea, but in the distance somewhere the light is catching the sea, and it's almost like a line across. And I think I might have a little go at that just to see if I can get away with it. As today I'm Mr. Dangerous. Let's see what happens. It's just sort of what I don't want is this hang down. Just assess that for a minute. Okay. So I'm going to lift it up just a bit over there. Forget the steamship, that's gone. Not totally, but maybe it'll come back. And then I'm going to blur that in a minute. Reasonably pleased with that, that's good. Except I've got two bubbles. Don't want two bubbles. Let's have another bit of something going on there. Just to take the attention away from those two bubbles. Let's sort of debobble it or make it more of something. Let's just sort of push that up here, like so. You'll be quite brutal with it. It'll recover. Okay, that might be more interesting. Good. Right. More bits of texture in the cliff, and then I'll do a little bit more on the foreground, and then I'll do a little bit of blurring. So I really want people to look at this. Remember I said that little change of angle has to be really acute, but I think I want to strengthen it just a bit over there. So the water comes right up over there. And check that angle again. That's sort of okay. It'll improve. So let's reshape that. There's the cut into that bit there. Probably enough. So, a few sort of little, I don't know what they are, little bits of light just catching some chalk. Let's have a pronounced one there. And let's have a nice bit of light catching the water, particularly down here. So really, okay. So think of water. You know, I was going to say it's fluid, isn't it? But how obvious can you get? You've got to make water look as though it's moving. And the best way to do that is to sort of, wiggle it. That's a technical term. So there's some wiggles there. So it'll start to look wet. That's what I want. I want to turn oil into water. Okay, so that's sort of wiggling it slightly. I'm just going to do a bit of blurring because it's always satisfying. Excuse me getting in the way. Right, it doesn't have to be a giant brush, just a clean brush. Tends to work better than one that's, been abused and suddenly become crisp. So completely new brush, just a few flicks. And all your brush strokes, really, I can't emphasize it strongly enough, it's just a touch. You're not digging into the paint, and you don't necessarily want to move paint. You just want to blur it. So just literally a touch. See, there's a little bit of paint on the edge, but it's not much. And when I'm happy with the sky, which I suppose I am, the horizon. Remember what I said about moving your entire body? Much easier. That didn't work. Doesn't always work, but it's close. I want that to be much softer. Let's have another go. And it really is, exactly what I'm going to do. Don't be careful. Just sort of, just go for it. So right along the edge of the water here, all I'm going to do is this, okay, until it looks good. Just going to move that little clip out the way for a second. Hope it doesn't fly across the room. It has happened. It's happened in a class once, I think. Okay, so there we go. There's just a little bit of, I don't know what it is. Gentle waves. Okay, so we've got something here that looks like a wave that's sort of turning slightly, I suppose. Do I want that sort of, well, why not? Let's see if we can just enhance it a bit in a couple of places. Let's just have a look. Now, the top of that wave, think about these waves, they're fascinating things. I used to, again, when I was a student, I'd be at this place and I'd sit and just have an hour of wave staring, an hour staring at the cliff, an hour at the sky, and trying to understand how it all works, I never really got the wave bit, but I know it in theory. In other words, some of it needs to be high, some of it needs to be low. But it mustn't, the thing is with waves is to not over stylize. And also, I think, I'm pretty sure that this, for me, is one of those things where I can paint the beginning of a wave like this, and then I would have to let it dry and then work on it when it's dry. But it's starting to get a bit of movement in it. Okay, so the beach. Let's try, let's just try mixing white further up the beach. Really go for it. A bit of reflection there. I think it's working quite well. I've actually got a few minutes of Super 8 movie film that I made of this exact place, which I could try finding, although it's in a much longer bit of video, so movie. I might have to chop it out, but I could eventually show you that. It was a very, very hot summer's day, and hardly any waves, but it's exactly this spot. So a bit more light catching there. How does that look? Getting there. Yeah, I think that may be it. So I'm quite happy with the sky, but I'll do another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I think I'll probably be at the point where I really have to sit. The only thing I'm going to do is just a little tiny bit on the sky. And just to bring in a little bit of light just there. And then a little bit of this. I don't like contrails, so I'm not actually trying to paint contrails. They just turn up every now and then. Now, if you do what I'm doing here, and you do have a shape that you don't want, and it hardly shows, and I look at the look in the viewfinder, but if you do want that to go away, just use the corner and just sort of mush it a bit. And there it is, gone. Do I want that sitting there on its own? No, I don't. Glad you asked. I want to connect these two and trail it off up there. Okay. Right, that's quite a nice slight echo of the cliff. Right, so I think that may be it for this painting. Do I want to do anything here? Maybe I do. Maybe I just want to do that. Complete with spooky water. Now there are a few other things I could do with that. Actually, I just spotted something. This is the sky brush, same brush I did on the sky. What I could try is this. Just along there is this. But that's all. Well, I'm really stopping. That's it. So I'm going to photograph that, and I'll send you the photo. If you've never been here before, you'll be quite surprised at the difference. There's a hair there, but I'm not going to worry about it. The difference that the photograph makes is quite incredible. Right, so I'll stop the recording.